All right. Well, welcome everybody. On behalf of the Michigan Center for Civic Education, we welcome all of you watching on Facebook and that will watch us in the near future in the inaugural season of our community conversations. My name is Ellen Zwarnstein. I serve as the executive director at the Michigan Center for Civic Education. And as many of you may know, MCCE is Michigan's K-12 civic education organization dedicated to student programming through events like We the People, which is a simulated congressional hearing, mock trial, where students transform themselves into attorneys and witnesses in order to advance justice, and also Project Citizen, which is our public policy advocacy piece, where students look at community issues and then work together in order to create collaborative solutions that benefit local communities. We also serve as the professional development for teachers who are really looking to delve deeper into civic knowledge and civic understanding. So we want to take a moment to acknowledge the people that have made tonight possible. First, we want to acknowledge tonight's moderator, Glenn Ellen Lemberg. She is an alumnus of the We the People program and is now studying at Grand Valley State University in public administration. And we also want to recognize the generosity of Warner, Norcross, and Judd. They have helped to underwrite the work of MCCE, including mock trial and this inaugural speaker series. So the purpose of the community conversations serves to act as a bridge between the K-12 communities and the greater civic, governmental, and law-related education communities. We hope that we get to learn from the personal and professional stories and experiences that will provide pathways for all of us to see ourselves as part of the fabric of our communities and civic education as a pathway and a bridge to get there. So for tonight's purpose, we're going to focus on the stories, the reflections, the expertise, and the analysis of the lived experiences, opportunities, and challenges facing especially Asian American communities and beyond. What we really hope is that while May does provide the context of Asian American heritage awareness, we're not here only to discuss those stories within this particular month. Rather, we're looking at compelling stories of representation, of current events, and of visibility. And tonight, we're very honored that Dr. Kozar is here with us tonight, who will dig a little bit deeper into to explore and to reveal the possibilities, as well as the limitations that we face now in our society, and hopefully work together in order to advance a better future. And also, we'll talk about the process. So we're live on Facebook, and you're welcome to comment there. And for those of you who might have a chance to join us on the Zoom, you're welcome to put questions in the chat. Your moderator, Ms. Lemberg, and myself will moderate that and provide some questions to tonight's speaker as well. And at the end of our meeting, we'll send out this link to our community members, to our schools, and we'll also add it to the library of resources that we have online, and hoping to share and expand and disseminate the information to benefit as many people as we can here in Michigan and beyond. So it is now my great honor to introduce tonight's moderator. Her name is Glenn Ellen Lemberg, and she is an alumnus of Michigan State University's James Madison College and is currently a graduate student at Grand Valley State University in their Master of Public Administration program. Her concentrations are in nonprofit management and leadership, and not only is tonight's moderator, but is also an intern with us here at MCC, and we couldn't be happier that she is here with us. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Glenn Ellen, who will have also the privilege of introducing tonight's speaker.
Thanks. While the theme of Asian American Heritage Month draws light to stories and experiences, we know it is more than a month. It is a call for greater inclusion, greater appreciation, and acknowledgement of the contributions and possibilities for an inclusive society. So we will use the space tonight to open dialogue, share stories, and explore pathways for greater understanding of civic possibilities from diverse perspectives. Along the way, stories of resilience, joy, resistance, and persistence will help formulate our own civic and legal possibilities. And without further ado, our speaker tonight is Dr. Meaghan Kozar, and she received her PhD in American Studies at Michigan State University, a master's in English at Iowa State University, and a BA in art education at Viterbo University. She has over 22 years of experience teaching, advising, and training in higher education. She is the former assistant director of MSU's Asian Pacific American Studies program and is a current program coordinator for MSU's Office of Cultural and Academic Transitions. Her areas of expertise include communications, leadership training, and program development. Her passions include empowering emerging leaders, creating spaces for student expression, and bringing together diverse communities. She is the advisor for APASO, or the Asian Pacific American Student Organization, leads the coordination of OCAT's annual Spartan Remix, is part of OCAT's Student Success Initiatives team, and leads OCAT communications with website and social media management. For the 2021-2022 academic year, Meaghan will fill a one-year role as an interim project manager for the Inclusive Campus Initiative for the Division of Residential and Hospitality Services.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I always love the opportunity to talk about creating awareness and inclusion. So I'm excited to get started tonight. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Is everything look okay?
It looks great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. So my presentation tonight is entitled Stop Asian Hate, a response to resurfacing of anti-Asian violence during a global pandemic. With the emphasis on resurfacing, because this isn't something, although the awareness of the anti-Asian violence that is happening now is critical and urgent, we have to remember that this isn't something that is brand new. So just to kind of give context for the impact the pandemic has had on the APITA, the Asian Pacific Islander Desi American community. Here are some stats. This was from the image in the graph is from March through December of 2020. And then even recently here, you can see a reference to from April 30th, 2021, the spike of anti-Asian, the attacks of Asian Americans has spiked 164%. Again, to emphasize, this isn't something new. This isn't like, oh, because of COVID-19 and the coronavirus, this is all of a sudden Asian Americans and the PETA community are facing this violent attack. I mean, this has actually happened for decades and centuries. So just to give kind of an overview here of some different moments, there's many more. Back to 1871 with the Chinese massacre, where over 15 Chinese Americans were lynched. Through the 1940s, hostility directed towards specifically Japanese Americans during World War II, through Vincent Chin murder in 1982 in Detroit, where he was viewed as Japanese when he was actually Chinese. And then of course the post 9/11 impact that took place on Asian Americans. And so I want to focus tonight on what Michigan State University is doing. So I advise APASO, which is our student organization, one of the CORES groups, which is the Council of Racial and Ethnic Students. And APASO is one of the umbrella groups that serves as the political voice that creates, awareness for the APITA community at MSU. There's many affiliates underneath APASO. And at MSU, there's over 800 student organizations, and APASO is just one, but because of their role and their history, they have a unique role in creating opportunity and creating awareness for specifically the APITA community in collaboration with the course groups. So the course groups make up Black Student Alliance, North American Indigenous Student Organization, and CRU, Culturas de las Razas Unidas. So I want to focus tonight on just what are we doing at Michigan State as a result of the anti-Asian violence that's taken place during this global pandemic. And I want to focus on some areas that teachers and anyone viewing this video can use in their classroom in terms of their research or in terms of their shaping their curriculum or shaping their training and development or their interactions with creating a more inclusive environment. So the first one is to empower APITA students. So this is something that I help the students create that we put together actually in March of 2020. So the students had taken this, this traumatic experience of having to, switch to go home, to get off campus so quickly because of the virus and the beginnings of the hate that was happening and the attacks on Asian Americans. And they took that opportunity as a moment to create a campaign that actually spread and did very well on social media. This year with APASO, it's actually going to be the 40th anniversary. I just wanted to emphasize this. So this moments, these historical moments that are attacks on Asian American communities with, for example, Vincent Chin's murder in Detroit, actually this propelled the creation of APASO. And it was actually as a result of that, students got together way back in 1980, almost 40 years ago, to create APASO. Another thing, another way to empower students is to center APITA voices. And so the image back here is recently the students put together a town hall, and there was over 350 faculty, staff, and students that attended at MSU. And that's pretty amazing in a environment where we are zoomed out. So we had that town hall, and the students did an amazing job to share their concerns and to, as representatives of other students who may not have the opportunity to share their voice, they're speaking for larger communities. So something I am suggesting is the center of student voices. And when we do that, we don't assume we know what students need. So the third strategy, I would say, in terms of how we have approached this climate is to create programs that, again, center student voices, but to focus on the complexities of the APITA identity. So my third strategy is to educate yourself to understand APITA student complexities. This program, OCAT's Green Table, was taken from the idea of Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talk. And it's just a great way of creating this intimate space of talking about some real serious issues, but then in a way where others can learn from it. So this particular episode of the Green Table, we focused on what does we are APITA, what does it mean to be an APITA student? And we have students who incorporate or who encompass, East Asian to South Asian to Southeast Asian to adoptees to different genders to different areas. And we wanted to highlight and showcase their stories. Um, this actually is a video recording that's available on our website, www.ocat.msu.edu. You can look up under programs, the green table. Um, and this is something as well. We need to provide accessible resources for people who are trying to create inclusive environments. Again, I want to show that this is not something new. This idea of empowering our APITA community. This is a campaign that we created back in 2012 to help think through the racism, or help to combat the racism that Asian Americans were facing in 2012. In particular, the international students. And so we had so many different communities, and this wasn't just the APITA community, it was actually whoever wanted to make a sign. So we had white students, the Black students, the Latino, Latinx students, and so forth, make these empowerment signs. But if you notice in their message, it's about embracing their identity, but it's also trying to reframe a narrative. So rather than just trying to break stereotypes, and it's a common thing that we're trying to do, is that do it in a way that explains, or kind of to reframe and empower the students who are being stereotyped. So I love this here in this corner. I'm a Chinese international student. My safety, happiness, feelings, and complaints are important. And, this idea of assuming international student, you are here at MSU, you get this opportunity, so you should be quiet and you have nothing to complain about. So this is an empowering message where she's saying, I need to be concerned about my safety, and I can complain if I want to. And I have complaints, and so I hope you listen to them. Another strategy is to create spaces for healing. So this was recently, we created a community vigil that honored the lives of those who were murdered in the Atlanta spa mass shooting. And we also created that space to remember others who have been victimized as a result of violence. This is so important to help to create spaces where students can start to heal because of all the things that they're having to deal with in social media and the news, or that they face themselves just going to the store. Are we creating spaces where they can talk about that, and then also find some kind of sense of healing? And then number 7 here is to make sure to create spaces that we check in on the students as well. So we don't create this and then we just kind of ignore them. Number 8 is, this one highlights a lot of the different programming that took place this particular Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The committee changed it to APITA Heritage Month, and we focused on celebrating the month in March, a little bit in April, because that's when the students are at the university or are taking classes. So this is an example of thinking about intentional programming when you talk about doing some kind of programs rather than the surface level that just focuses on, a cultural food or some cultural dance or something that, objectifies and, really exoticizes your community. And so this is really important to think about your intentional programming. And so, yeah, this is it. I know it was a quick presentation. Here's my contact information. Please reach out. I'm really looking forward to this year. There's a great opportunity to create this to further the environment of, sorry, further the environment of inclusion at MSU. And this actually position, the idea started out a while ago, but as a result of like the town hall and other different moments at MSU has really kind of compelled the leadership to create this position. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So the first question I have is, how can society move past anti-Asian hate?
How does it move past? I mean, that's a tough question. I don't think it's ever going to they're going to move past it, right? Because we live in an environment that is, it's a Eurocentric curriculum, you know, in schools, or we have a heterosexual patriarchal structure within the way our society is institutionalized or created or struck, you know, made. So I think that it's going to be difficult. And part of my presentation here is to recognize that it's been going on and it's probably going to keep going on. It's not just because of, you know, what's happened lately with the rhetoric of the coronavirus. And unfortunately, it's going to probably keep happening. But what we can do is to keep fighting against it and to keep empowering the APITA community in particular. I think that's important. I think it's also important to think about what we are teaching and how we're teaching it, or how we're teaching content. So as you mentioned, you know, this isn't just for this month, right? This isn't something that we're just going to talk about here and then forget about it. And we're not going to just talk about it in a way that just celebrates, you know, this PC fun culture that we've objectified, you know. We need to talk about the real issues and the complexities of the APITA community. I think that will help, but I don't think it'll ever go away, you know.
And there's a question from the audience that is, within K through 12 communities who have APITA populations, what examples might you see that act with integrity to advance meaningful inclusion?
So the meaningful inclusion is really powerful. I think that what we try to do, or people tend to do, is when they incorporate something Asian American, it's this outdated, traditional, centuries old version of what they think it needs to be Asian. So that's really like in terms of the clothing, in terms of the dance, in terms of the food, in terms of it's all objectified. And we don't talk about issues. We don't talk about you know, the uncomfortable histories. And it's not only that we should talk about those uncomfortable histories to say this happened and create this environment or this narrative that talks about Asian Americans as victims. That's so important. It's to talk about them in ways that they, through those moments where they were excluded and victimized, how they fought back and resisted. I think that that is super, super important in how we frame that narrative. So if we talk about real histories, and it's not pretty, right? It's not always comfortable because we want to talk about racism and exclusion, but how people have fought back. And that's, I think, empowering. So again, I would say examples would be the ways to frame narratives. So for example, I'm an adoptee, and we have a growing adoptee community that's kind of embracing talking about the issues that are actually have oftentimes been like silenced under the narrative of adoptees should be grateful for, you know, what they've done, right? And if this adopting narrative is you get matched with a family, that's the solution. And that's just the beginning of a new history, right? So when we talk about adoption, it's not only just talking about the wonderfulness of, you know, you were found, you were found a family because you know, your old family or whatever, your biological family no longer wanted you. I mean, it's complicated and complex. So how can we talk about it in a meaningful way? And allow spaces where students can share what's really going through their mind. And that goes back to, again, don't assume, we can't assume what students need or want. And at the same time, it's complicated because K through 12, growing up as Asian American, and it depends on where you're at, because if you're in an environment where it's predominantly white, you don't have the voice yet. You know, you don't know the language or the history to be able to articulate your questions or your pain or your traumas. And so that's difficult when we seek, you know, students to talk about their story K through 12, you know, elementary school. It's so you have to be careful that way. Find different ways to create opportunities where they can actually feel comfortable talking. Because if you say, so what are your concerns? They may not say anything because they have no idea. They may experience it, but they're kind of like in denial, or they're shutting down, or they just don't want to be made to feel different. So it's complicated, but again, I would emphasize the thinking about meaningful inclusion. You know, creating a larger narrative, finding different ways. Don't just do the simple, you know, simple ways to celebrate. So I don't know if that is, it's difficult, it's very complex.
No,
And then
it did.
and also just seeking out other people's opinions who they, you know, have gone through that. So like you're doing for me, I think that that's great.
And going back to higher education, what impact do groups like APASO have on MSU and the greater Lansing area?
So they've had a lot of impact. And you know, I always make sure to emphasize, so our office in particular, OCAT, is here only as a result of student activism. So there are so many moments that now the university is talking about diversity, equity, inclusion in a very common way, but it's oftentimes a result of the students who have protested or who have carried, you know, who have held town halls or who have written letters or who have been the voice for their community, who have created programs. So all of those different moments, all of that action and that activism has now compelled the community or the university now to think about inclusion. So this is really important. Their impact is huge. At MSU, we're really excited, for example, is that they're working toward a freestanding multicultural building. And that actually has been a request that students have had for decades. And finally, as a result of the leadership who's actually really inspired and wanting to support the students, they're now going to make sure that happens. So that impact is huge. They can do a lot of things. And then through K through 12, I think the students can have an impact as well. And I'm sure they do. It's just on a different intellectual level, because oftentimes it's not until college where students participate in an ethnic studies class. And so they start to learn about themselves, where in K through 12, they're not learning about themselves, rarely. Right? They're learning about history and different aspects of the US and they're not included. So they're reading books and they're not included. So it doesn't, it's what often takes until college where they sign up for that ethnic studies class and they say, oh my gosh, I'm finally learning about history, me. I just like, and it's mind blowing. So that's where I love being part of the APA studies program, um, because when the students are empowered to learn about their history, they just feel that sense of I can accomplish anything. And there's a whole sense of self-esteem and confidence and just um, like I matter, that kind of thing. So it's just, it's exciting.
Yep, definitely. And how can people get involved with these organizations at Michigan State and other universities across Michigan?
Well, and that's been there's been a few things. There's been good things in terms of being virtual, right? That we can actually, it's a lot cheaper than driving down to MSU, right? If you're somewhere else. So all of the programs are that APASO, for example, or many of the programs that we did have been virtual and people can log on. So following us through social media to find out when those programs are, getting on our listservs, those are great ways. Just reaching out, I put my contact information at the end. Those are ways that they can get involved, but we also are recording quite a bit. So going to our website, and I did put that one resource so they can, anyone can listen to the Green Table edition, the APITA edition on their own, and feel free to use it.
And a question from the audience is, have you seen curriculum possibilities that both tell the real raw story combined with stories of joy and resilience? What might that look like?
And it depends on what age group, and so I've taught undergraduate students at the college level, and that's how I teach. It's the real raw, and joy and resilience, right? It's literally all of that, and I want to make sure I incorporate that. And then also for the PETA community, it's not just this isolated community, because that is a problem as well. We only talk about these, like, Black History Month and Asian American, History Month and Latino History Month. I mean, those kind of things, right? So that's not real. I mean, people interact all the time. And we need to also break down that narrative of these isolated histories. So I talk about all of that. I get to talk about all of that in undergrad, because I taught race and ethnicity class through my writing classes, and I taught women in America and different courses like that. So for K through 12, again, your limitations might be greater than mine. So talking through with the superintendent or whoever is allowing you to all the shape or have input into the curriculum. I think so. For instance, like joy and resilience. I mean, you incorporate all of the first person who did this, the first person who accomplished this. That's oftentimes what you do, right? First person. But also talk about moments where, those are the joy part, those are the success stories, but then also the success stories through the resilience. So again, you're going to talk about World War II and the Japanese American incarceration history. Talk about the people who constantly fought back, who, like Fred Korematsu, or the draft resistors, or that said, I'll fight for the US if you free my family. Those moments, and then the impact that they had. Because if we don't incorporate that complexity of the stories, you just assume, oh, they might have been, why were they so scared? Why didn't they have enough guts to stand up for their country, or to stand up to the people who told them that they had to leave, and to go in the incarceration camps? But they did. We just don't tell it, right? And so it's like any ugly moment of history, it's been an ugly moment, but because of human resistance, it's become an empowering moment. And we want to remember the way people fought and struggled. The same way, let's do that for the Asian American community. But again, I would also add, I hope, I don't know, like it sounds like most of the people who are listening are, are teaching K through 12. Having those conversations with whoever decides what you have to teach, and it's going to get there's a time where students are going to be upset and they're going to fight back and say, why can't I learn more about myself or other marginalized communities? Don't wait for that, right? I hope the administrators and superintendents, whatever, they're not going to wait for people to get so upset. So be proactive and start to anticipate. It's going to happen. So hopefully teachers can vouch for themselves, and then other teachers can support each other to say, this is what we want. This is important. And for me, when I teach, okay, now I'm going a little off. I'm going. When I teach, I always say I embrace the fact that students should be made to feel uncomfortable in what they're learning so that they have questions, right? Because if we just teach them all this happiness and everyone is agreeable, they stop learning. They leave the classroom and they forget what they're talking about. They just think about what they're going to do next. But if they're made to feel like a certain way where they're questioning, or they're like, oh, I'm not sure about this, or they start to feel nervous about something, there's constantly thinking. And then the next day, return to it. How are you feeling about that discussion, or something to that effect? But I think that that's important. I hope that answers it.
And going back to your discussion about being the first to do something, one of your slides talked about a discussion regarding Vice President Harris, and I was wondering if you could talk through the limits and possibilities of her and her role as Vice President of the U.S.
I mean, that's awesome. It's awesome, and it's like people say, well, I say it as well too. You can love a movie and be critical of it, right? You can just absolutely like, wow, I really was inspired, but there were some problematic moments. Like that's how people write in research. They are interested in this topic, but then they find those moments where it's lacking and they need to develop it more. So it's the same thing with, Vice President Kamala Harris. We're not, you're not claiming that she's just this perfect person, or, she's one person, but there's tons of opportunity because of her being first, right? And so how can we use that to talk about, complex issues? So that particular program, I didn't lead that. I just want to emphasize that was actually led by the Asian Pacific American Studies program at MSU, and they took her historical, moment to think through what does that mean as for the relationships between Asian Americans and Black Americans, because there is a lot of anti-Blackness within the Asian American community, and probably vice versa, right, within the Black community, because of this structures of the model minority myth and all that. So that's a great way to talk about her and that complexity of what does it mean to be South Asian and Black, and it's tough because there's no one way to do it, but and again, as teachers, go into just ask the questions, have the students answer. A lot of times students want to, K through 12 in particular, answer how their teacher thinks they want to hear, so they really can't think for themselves. And I try to help them unlearn a lot of that when they get into undergrad. Is like, I don't want you just to agree with everything I'm saying. you know, because you think that's what I want you to, you know, say. It's about really trying to find your own voice. So asking questions, what does it mean that Kamala Harris is, you know, is both Asian and Black as a woman, and, you know, different things like that, to see what the students are going to pull from that. Are there any problems with that? Do you see any kind of, you know, just create questions that will get them to think. So, but yeah, I see tons of possibilities, and yeah, the limitations too, because then you know, also when people, communities that are marginalized, they are fighting against each other. It's not just for no reason, right? It's the way structures are built where people have to fight for resources, for voice, for airtime. And so that creates this kind of tension. So it creates a great opportunity to just talk about a lot of the issues that are happening within the larger society, but also to look at her as just one person and one example, and not the perfect ideal person, because that is what we would, you know, it's going to create a lot of problems, unrealistic expectations of her, and just this, yeah. So these are great questions, yeah. So
And there's another question from the audience, and you're discussing the need for brave and courageous spaces. What might be some ways that you cultivate those spaces?
yeah. Um, finding spaces where just, yeah, just empowering them, you know, maybe. So my undergrad was art education, and I always use art. I thought I was going to be an art teacher, but I always use art to this day. um so using art as a medium, like those signs are so powerful, and that's something that you can, that you see all over social media, but they have such an impact. I mean, the idea of signs at a picket, at a protest, right, or picket line, or whatever you say. um we don't, because people can't hear what they're saying, but the signs are powerful. So that could be a great opportunity for K through 12. What would your sign be? You know, um, having projects where it's saying this is your opportunity to embrace your identity. What does your sign say? And when you embrace your identity, you're doing it in a way that challenges something. So you could also start from saying, you know, what are you tired of hearing all the time? What do people assume about you? What do you hear over and over, and it just kind of, you know, irritates you? That could be a starting point of how you want to help people, how you can explain yourself to people. So creating a sign, or because again, I do think it's going to be more difficult for, you know, K through probably elementary school, you know, middle school, they'll probably open up more, and high school definitely open up more, but find spaces where it's okay to talk about their community, but they never get to talk about their community. So introduce to them a moment of history and then talk about that. So creating, yeah, those spaces. And I think once you start to create more spaces like that, and not only isolated, talk about Asian Americans while you're talking about Black Americans, and while you're talking about just American, you know, World War II, or just talking about just American history, right? And so you start incorporating that. Um, have people, you know, write down, have students write down, like, what are they thinking? What's, you know, is there any problems to this? Is there, you know, ask for them, what ideas can they come up with? So, but I think with K through 12, you know, it's you have to do gradual, because just thinking back when I was K through 12 many years ago, it was difficult because all you're dealing with all the teenager stuff where you just want to fit in, and you don't want to call attention to your difference, because it was made to feel your difference is negative. So embracing difference, right? It's like, oh, and that could be another thing, right? Because it says, oh, we're all the same. When it comes down to it, we're all same, we're human. So we want to shy away from the differences, but it's like okay to say we're different, and that's a good thing. That's what diversity is. And yes, we're the same, but you don't need to. It's really, you have to be careful with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions. And we have a rapid fire segment.
I'm a
So,
little nervous. Okay.
so I was
Okay.
wondering what your favorite color is.
Teal. I love teal. Oh my gosh. I have so much paint and my son is like, okay, enough with the teal. I love it. It's just so like not the dull teal, the vibrant. I love all vibrant colors. My art background. I like we painted our office and my house. I can't see it, but I just love it. And I love like light aqua and yeah. You would
What's your
think it's pink because I have so much pink here.
what's your go-to coffee shop beverage?
Okay, so it's funny because I used to see the cafe mochas, and then there was a time where I just had black coffee, and then you can't go back to it because it's too sweet. And so I just like love a good black coffee, no cream, no sugar, none of that. And my son actually worked at Big B at Hazlitt, so shout out to Big B at Hazlitt. He doesn't like coffee, but they have like smoothies and they have other stuff like that. So yeah.
What's your favorite book?
Oh gosh, okay. Okay, so my favorite book is Wounds of Passion by Bell Hooks. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. It's this memoir of hers, and she does this just reflection of her. She just talks about her life, but then she has this italicized part where she's reflecting like in the third person, or I don't know how it's just like she's writing about her life, and then in the italicized, it's like she felt this way, but she's talking about herself. It's just like reflecting. It's super great. And then also, I'm in the middle of this. Think Like a Monk. It's awesome. It's fantastic. There we go. Think Like a Monk. Jay Shetty. Fantastic.
What's your favorite saying or quote?
That actually was for a long time. It's so hard. I never have just one, but for a long time it was from Bell Hooks from Wounds of Passion. It was to feel deeply, we can't avoid pain. But I also love the Langston Hughes one. It's like a little paragraph, but it's something about I stand on top of the mountain, free within myself, something like that. I don't have it, but I love it.
What's your favorite season?
Gosh, probably spring because it's May. Well, for APA Heritage Month, but then also my son was born in May, and then it's Mother's Day. But I've got allergies, so so this tree was in my old house, and it's beautiful, but it was the worst allergies ever, but it's beautiful. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just remember it for a little bit.
What about your choice of superpowers?
So my son always asked that because when he was younger, he'd always ask that. But I have the one. I think I would love to be what's it teleport. So you could like go places like boom, boom. You don't have, that would be amazing. And then you're back. And then because I have family like in Minnesota, I can just see them quick, come back, and all those different things. So we traveled so much. Like he had, a lot of stuff. So that'd be great.
And last but not least, what is your favorite song?
Oh my gosh. Okay, it's kind of funny. Well, two songs came into my head, but there's so many good songs, but is it Audra or Andra Days, I Rise Up. That's a chill, you get goosebumps. But just the corny, You Are My Sunshine. That's so I remember, yeah, like my son sang that, and we named our cat Sunshine after that song too. I love that. It's a cute song. So that's a classic.
Both incredible songs. And
Thank
what might be a final takeaway thought for the civic education community and the legal communities regarding Asian Pacific American Heritage Month?
I would just say it's so complex. There is no one definition or no one way we can talk about Apita communities, or they span, you know, over 50 or to 100, I don't know, countries and communities, and there's so many histories. It's complex, and that's okay, because we can never just study them and learn and know everything about one people. No, we aren't able to do that. It's constant, and it's changing constantly. So just to remember, everybody is complex, and then also to think about your narratives and how you are sharing a story. Is this is it in a way that's going to objectify them? And when we talk about stereotypes, for example, I often use this too. Stereotypes for Asian Americans, there's a lot of different ones, but we tend to focus on this one that's hard to explain about this. They're smart or they're good at math. And that's one issue. There's so many other issues, but people tend to focus, and there's a sincerity behind, well, don't stereotype them, right? And there's a sincerity in that. But the thing is, it's more complicated than saying, just don't call me smart, don't call me good at math. It's more complicated than that, because of course we want to be smart. Anyone wants to be smart. I want my child to be smart. I don't want to say break a stereotype so grow up and be dumb. But it's the idea of how Asian Americans, when they're viewed as smart, they're not viewed in leadership roles or someone I want to aspire to be. It's about being smart in the way you'll do what I say. You'll just, like a robot. A robot is highly, highly, highly intelligent and highly smart, but they're manipulated, and they are silenced, and they're dehumanized. And so that's where we have to kind of broaden the way we talk about that, and really think about how it's harmful, because it's not just about saying, don't stereotype them. It's about how you're stereotyping, how you are really dehumanizing them, how you really see someone and you don't see someone. You don't see their flaws and their humanity or their successes or their just being, and you know, that's the problem when we talk about that stereotype. So again, when you're talking about stereotypes, don't just say, oh yeah, haha, you view me as smart and good at math, and it's more complicated than that.
Thank you so much, and for your presentation and for answering all of my questions and the audience questions. And I'd like to turn it back over to Ellen.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo our deep appreciation for your time, your expertise, your stories, and thank you for feeling deeply and thinking deeply with us. I know it'll make a difference to so many communities that are out there, and our teachers in particular, who are really grasping with questions about how can we create those spaces where people do get to show up whole and be their whole human and be their whole self. So thank you for also bringing a flavor of the green table to our conversation and to your conversation tonight. It's very inspiring to see the work that you're doing at Michigan State, and we are grateful to learn from you this evening. So thank you again.
You're welcome. And actually, it makes me think there's a former student, Silver Moore, and she's doing some amazing things where created this curriculum, this classroom clapback, to talk about curriculum for, in particular, the Black communities. And maybe this is something we need to do about creating ways to incorporate curriculum for the Apita community, Hey, who knows?
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much again. And we're going to